Welcome to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm your host, Tom Collins, Executive Director of Arizona's Citizens Clean Elections Commission.
And I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director for Clean Elections.
Today we're talking about an executive order from the President that seeks to direct the Department of Homeland Security to work with the Social Security Administration to compile a list of eligible voters. But we're talking about what the order says and what the order realistically could do with one of the nation's leading experts in election administration. Before we get to that, Gina, can you explain how Arizona currently verifies citizenship for voter registration?
Sure. So every voter that is submitting a voter registration form, they have to provide documentary proof of citizenship if they want to vote in state elections. Essentially, what that means is they are submitting documentary proof of citizenship, which can be either a copy of their birth certificate or their passport. It's going over to the county recorder. The recorder's office is reviewing that. They are verifying that, yes, in fact, this person is a citizen, and then they are then eligible to vote in state elections.
We're here with David Becker, the Executive Director and founder of the nonpartisan nonprofit Center for Election Innovation and Research. We're very excited to have him here. Thank you, David, for joining the show.
Thanks. Great to be here, Tom.
We're talking about the executive order called Ensuring Citizenship Verification and Integrity in Federal Elections. Let's start with outlining what an executive order is, its limitations, and what its legal standing is compared to, say, legislation passed by Congress.
Yeah, this is, I think it's more accurate to portray it as what it purports to be rather than what it is. What's the text in the executive order purports to direct the Department of Homeland Security to create, for the first time in American history, a national citizen list, which would effectively serve as a national voter registration list from federal sources. And then it directs the Postal Service to take that list and then demand every state list of voters who the state intends to send mail ballots to. And it's going to compare these two lists, the Postal Service is going to, and refuse to mail ballots to those who aren't on the DHS list, who aren't on both lists. It also directs Postal Service to redesign mail ballot envelopes in all of the jurisdictions, which are something the jurisdictions have been doing for decades. That's what it purports to do. The reality is this has as much legal effect as if I wrote the exact same words on a napkin and crayon. I mean, the president has no power to do this. That is not an accident. That is not a partisan thing. President Biden wouldn't have had the power to do this. President Trump doesn't have the power to do this. That's because the framers, in their wisdom, when they crafted the Constitution, if you read the Constitution throughout, one thread that is woven through the entire Constitution is a limitation on executive power. They had just fought a war against a monarch. They were very conservative about concentration of power. And then specifically with regard to elections, they created a specific carve-out. And they said in Article 1, Section 4, what we call the Elections Clause, the state legislatures get to run elections. Congress can also run elections. The president has no role in elections whatsoever.
So, David, just, from the voter perspective, I just want to ask a very straightforward question. At the end of the day, because Arizona, we are already in our primary election season. Our primary is July 21st. At the end of the day, will states and voters still have vote by mail?
Yes. Period.
I'm really curious about this from the post office perspective, because to me, when I hear this discussion, it seems like the post office now has it's purporting to give the post office authority to say yes or no, we are going to deliver this piece of mail. Has that ever been in existence before in any other type of situation where me as a sender for a piece of mail, I would now be subject to the post office's approval just simply based on who the person is?
The history of mail voting in this country goes a long ways back. We've had mail voting since at least the Civil War, probably before that. And the history of mail voting in the way that a lot of Western states do it, really tracks back several decades ago. And in many ways, Arizona was at the forefront of that. And we have to remember that was bipartisan. If anything, it was perhaps a little more led by Republicans in the state of Arizona. Because if you think about it, the people who most likely are going to rely upon the mail, they tend to be older, they tend to be property owners. These are people that probably the Republican Party thought of as likely their voters. And so now we've seen mail voting as kind of the primary method of voting really sweep through the West. It's very common in the West, not as much in the East. Different cultures are totally understandable, but Arizona has had this situation. About 80% of Arizonans vote by mail. They know vote by mail. They trust vote by mail. They expect vote by mail. And that's because the state legislature, which is elected by the people of Arizona, has kept vote by mail in place, right? I mean, vote by mail is popular in Arizona, despite some of the loud, disinformation that gets spread. And we're not seeing the state legislature roll back vote by mail. And the state legislature under the United States Constitution has that power. So when it comes to the Postal Service now under this executive order, again, imagine telling the Postal Service, which is already unable to do what its primary job is given its budget. It's having challenges delivering mail in a timely way. It's talking about reducing service. There's a variety of things. And now we're saying, now you're going to do something totally new. You're going to take a database from the Department of Homeland Security. You're going to take 50 different databases from the states. You're going to compare them. You're going to do that within about 30 days, by the way, right before a major election. And then we're going to tell you that you can deliver mail to some people and not deliver mail to other people. That, again, back to your point, Gina, that is not allowed. That is not legal. The president doesn't run the Postal Service. A board of governors runs the Postal Service. And can we imagine how awful it would be if a president of the United States could just tell the Postal Service, deliver mail to these people that I like, don't deliver mail to these people that I don't like? That's not the way this country runs. It's not legal. It will not stand under scrutiny from the courts.
To just expand on that a little bit, David, in context, this executive order, we've seen officials from the Justice Department seizing ballots in Michigan and in Georgia. We've seen in Arizona materials from the state Senate review taken. We also saw this weekend, after the Supreme Court's Voting Rights Act decision, the president calling for all state legislatures to redraw their districts and even to stop elections that are ongoing to do so. Is there any context or precedent or any way to talk about this federal intrusion onto these state issues?
Well, it's certainly unprecedented, but it's also failing. I mean, let's look back at, you mentioned the effort to get materials from Michigan, Wayne County, Michigan. And of course, we know about the Maricopa County situation and the prior Fulton County situation. Here's what actually happened. In January of 2026, somehow the federal government got a magistrate to sign off on a warrant. Everyone who's reviewed that, including myself, has found that warrant to be extremely deficient. It is now being challenged in federal court. A Trump-appointed judge has asked the DOJ to explain itself. I don't know how that judge is ultimately going to rule. It's a very high standard to get a warrant kind of pulled back and get the materials back. But a warrant is the most severe form of evidence gathering. You serve a warrant, you get the evidence right away. There's no opportunity from the person who has that evidence to go to court and say, hey, wait a second, you're not entitled to this. The government gets it. That happened 3 months ago. A month and a half or so, actually about 2 months ago, we remember that grand jury subpoena that was issued to Arizona Senate President Warren Peterson. I think we could all characterize him as someone who's generally aligned with the president. And he was caretaker for materials that related to that Cyber Ninjas so-called audit from 2021, most of which was public already. And he willingly gave this information over as a part of that subpoena. A subpoena is a huge step down from a warrant. A subpoena can be challenged. If Senator Peterson did not want to give this up, he could have gone to court and say, hey, wait a second, let's put the brakes on it. They're not entitled to it. He didn't want to. And then next, a couple of weeks ago, the DOJ sent a letter to Wayne County, Michigan, saying, give us all of your materials from the 2024 election. Literally just said, give it all. It's delivered to Eric Neff, the acting chief of the voting section, as if they were going to load moving vans up in Detroit and then drive them to Washington, D.C. and dump them at Main Justice on Pennsylvania Avenue. I can't tell you how much a strongly worded letter is a step down from a warrant and then a subpoena. That's what we're seeing.
So, what do you think, looking forward to election night, what do you think the major takeaway is for your average voter? If they're watching their news and they're hearing about this from the federal government, and then you've got local government officials who are saying, hold on, nothing's going to change. That's not the case. You can believe in your elections. Here's how you can confirm your ballot was counted, things like that. What should ultimately be their takeaway?
Trust your election officials. There are Republicans and Democrats working every day in Arizona to make sure that the results of elections in Arizona, no matter how close, and they're going to be close at the statewide level because they always are recently in Arizona, that they can withstand all of the scrutiny. And if the losers have a problem with it, there's a way to challenge it. There's a legal way to challenge it. And then once those challenges are exhausted, to accept the results.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Gina Roberts.
And I'm Tom Collins. We'll see you next week.